Pay attention.
Okay, it is a few minutes after 6 here. We'll go ahead and get started with the August 11th Zoning and Facilities Committee meeting here. We do have, I just want to mention, we do have in attendance Mr. Dudley, Mr. Morrison, Mr. Pennings, Mr. Bates, Mr. Beaver, Ms. Martin, and myself, David Moore. I do have a couple of things here that I was going to see about adding on to the agenda. I believe one of them was you should have had something handed out to you. If you're not, you can get that from Stan. And we're adding that in as item number 8. So it'll be loose furnishings for Central High School. And again, there's a handout on that. I think they've also added it to SharePoint. There's another item we're adding. It will be, since we moved everything down, it's a little confusing, but it will be the new second to last item, which is HVAC update as well. And that will be the new item number 12. It should be 12. The last item should now be, unless I did this wrong, that should be 13. Did I do it wrong?
I guess I was thinking we're adding a new item 8 and then everything else.
No, it should be 12, because we've only got 11 items here. I think that's right. So we've added 2 items. Hopefully I did that right. I apologize.
You got 11 items, you added 2, you should have 13.
Good, okay. It will be 12.
So it's before the attendance update?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry if I was being unclear on that. But everybody clear on those changes? I can go over them again if we need to. If so, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we do have an agenda for this evening. And note that Ms. Powers is here as well. We also, in your packet, should have the minutes from the last meeting. If everybody's had a chance to review those, do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on here to the capital projects report. We do have item A there. On that is the architect's report, final billing. I think that's just, I don't think we have anything to go over other than just what's in there in the documentation.
If I could speak to that just a
Sure.
little bit. We did send you We did send you a letter making an explanation, and I felt like it was important to do that because at the last meeting, we reported to you that Mr. Hibden had given us a final accounting showing that there was $243,580.80 remaining after we made their final payment. When we went through, though, he sent along with that, I think it was 4 or 5 invoices. We had not received 3 of those for the last 5 months. And so we sent all that to Mr. Wooliver just to confirm, because there were some things they were showing. We felt like we were at this percentage of completion of the project and make sure that everything fit within terms of our contract. Well, when Mr. Wooliver sent that back, we were getting ready to bring it to you this meeting to get your final approval. We started adding up the invoices, and it didn't add up to his numbers. So I called Mr. Hibden last week and said, this doesn't add up to your numbers. And so he said, I think we made an error. So he went back. And what happens is on each invoice, they carry the totals forward. And they had made a mistake on carrying the totals forward. So he refigured it and sent it back to me this week. And it shows that where before the total amount we were going to have paid them would have been $2 million for this total Central High School project would have totaled out at $2,051,951.19. When he went back and re-added the invoices, it was $2,123,661.19, which left only $171,870.80 left after we've paid them in what was budgeted for architect fees. Now, the reason that's important is we had communicated, and we talked with Hewlett Spencer at the last meeting about them carrying the architectural design as a part of their responsibility from this point forward. And according to Mr. Hibden, we were going to have $243,000 left for that. But actually, now, based on these new numbers, there's only going to be $171,870.80 left in those funds that were designated for architects. Does that make sense?
Probably as good as it can.
Okay.
Are we satisfied that that number is, are we all in agreement that the number we're at now is where we need to be, or are we not sure?
It does match the invoices. We have added the invoices up, and this does match the invoices that they sent us. So we didn't have those invoices before to add in. We keep a running total in our spreadsheet. So based on what they've invoiced us for to date, that would be correct.
And I guess beyond just the invoices, are we satisfied that that's meeting our obligations for the services that have been provided at this point?
We could, I guess, let Mr. Wolliver expound on the things that he looked at when he looked at the information.
Contractually, yes.
Okay.
It lines up with their initial projections as to what the point that would be at this part of the project. So, yeah, from a contractual standpoint, I think it lines up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. Are we comfortable that SSOE is not sitting on any more invoices that they haven't passed along? Because in the past, they've sit on stuff, and you know, I don't want us a year from now to be finding out that, oh, we found this in a desk drawer.
All we have is the email from Mr. Hibden saying this is the final invoice. And we do have that.
Okay.
As far as, you know, they're showing, this matches up with the schedule that they gave us originally as far as the percentage of work that they said they would, because they said we'll charge you for this percent month one, this percent month two, and through June, which was month 14 of the project, it does match up percentage-wise with what they said they were going to charge. Now, again, that's the only thing we can go by is he said this is the final invoice, and it does match up with their schedule.
Jake, do we have any recourse showing, you know, that, hey, we've ended our agreement, we asked for all final billings and invoices, and then, I mean, do we have any protection saying, you know, we're not going to approve any more if they come in later, or?
You'd have the opportunity to review it. Just because he says it's a final invoice doesn't necessarily mean that he might not come back later and say, oh, I forgot this. I think you would have the same defense as you have now if they brought something like that out. I don't see that as happening because it does line up with what they should be billing at this point in time. So I wouldn't expect any major surprises along those lines, but you still have your defenses if that came forward.
Okay, thank you.
And I will, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just refer you to the very last page of this attachment, which is the summary of the final, Jerry, if you could go on to that very last one. I think got to keep going, because this is it. Basically what they're showing is that they're charging us a base fee, which is their design work, which includes the design. They charge based on the amount of the contingency funds that have been used. There's been an accounting that's been kept of what contingency. So they're using, they charge the design fee of the guaranteed maximum price less the contingency that was laid out within the GMP budget. Then they charged us that percentage on the portion of the contingency that had been used, not all of the contingency, because through June 30th, only a portion had been used. Then they charged us for the reimbursables and kitchen consultant fees and those kind of things that had been used at this point in the project. And so that all added up to $2,123,661.19. Plus, they charged us $75,070 from some additional design work. You remember that was talked about through the project, that there were some additional things that came up that they did some redesign on. Some of it was to provide some savings by changing some things to bring some savings into the project, so they did do that. This does include all of the addendums that they did, all of the, what it's called, they issued was it addendums or?
RFIs?
Well, I'm thinking about, they came back after the original plan was given to you, and they added several things to it, so it includes all of those different parts to that.
Architect supplemental instructions.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but,
I think there were addendums, one and two.
17,000, and did they charge you a fee on top of that, you say?
Yeah, and I know we've talked about before the things that came up in the project that there's been debate about, like the extra foundation work, all of that. I mean, this fully accounts for everything they designed. So their fee has been charged, which is, and it's in here somewhere. I'll tell you in just a few minutes. It's on that original budget. The design fees was 5.4% times 75% of the amount of the guaranteed maximum price, less the contingency, plus the contingency amount used
Correct.
through June 30th. The construction administration fees, 5.4% times 25%, at the point that, and they were at 64%, according to their records, of construction administration.
Okay.
And then the other fees had to do with the reimbursables for the culinary design, the TDEC submittal, and then printing and extra that they charged us for printing and postage of things that they did. But again, I know there's been some debate about should this have been done, again, some of the extra design work, some of the extra foundation work and all this, but that's paying them everything for all of their design work.
And just to be clear on that, with the extra foundation work, we're paying them their percentage on top of that, correct?
We're paying them for that extra design.
Lovely.
We're paying them that too as well. That's correct. Because it was part of the project.
Yeah, because I did just want to point that out too, and I know, and this is something I believe that Mr. Lassiter brought up. Again, I don't know where it falls in this, but Mr. Lassiter did bring up, I think it was last meeting about this, the 5-year plan that we were presented with. If I'm not mistaken, under the contract terms, they actually had said they would provide us a 5-year plan that included community and public comment input on that, which they didn't do. So I guess technically they didn't. If we want to start picking and choosing what was done and wasn't done, they did. I don't think they really gave us a good product on that personally, but I guess that might be what it is. But Mr. Wilver, so I guess your answer is, in the short term, is yes, that you're confident that what we've gotten so far matches up with what we feel like they have actually completed, and they've invoiced us in it, and it looks as correct as we can, I guess, have it to be based on those percentages of what's completed at this point with the project. Okay. Is there any action we need to take on this one, or just let, because it's already been approved, so there's really nothing to do other than or do we need to approve something on this?
Do we need to approve it? Is it just a report, I guess, to you?
I think it's just kind of FYI, but it's going to be paid, that they can look at take out of it.
Okay. All right, if nothing else on that, any other comments, we can move on to item B, the Hewitt Spencer Bell and Associates report.
I did have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Breed, now just, so looks like we've got about $170,000 left in the piggy bank, so to speak. Is that going to be sufficient for us to finish this project as far as what our architectural requirements are?
I would have to ask Mr. Hewlett to respond to that.
Okay, because I would like to have some idea of that now on the front end, if it's anticipated that this is going to be enough, or are we already seeing that, no, that's not going to be enough? Because I'm seeing, I think you were indicating that SSOE is saying their billing represents that they're about, was it 64% of the
64%,
construction administration, as though the project is 64%
Well, the project is
Done,
actually
or-
about, according to the billing from Hewlett Spencer, and through June 30th, I think I've got that number. I think it's 49%. Let me look it up, because I don't want to tell you wrong. It's not 64, we're not 64%, but their reasoning is that more of the submittals, part of construction administration is they have to review all the submittals that the subcontractors make. And then most of those submittals have already been done for the entire project.
So some of the work may be
So
kind
the work
of
is heavier
front-end
for them
loaded.
that is correct.
Okay, okay.
And so that's what they said. So that is more than what we've paid out in construction fees.
Right.
And I'll tell you how much those are in just a few
Yeah, I
minutes.
saw that in that report. It looks
Yeah.
like we've paid out of our construction fees 55%,
That's correct, yes, sir.
but we've paid the architect 65%, so I'm just
And that's
a
because
little
they
bit
say
concerned
their work
there.
is more front,
Okay.
they say, and we did have that conversation with the project man for Bell Construction, and he said, yes, most of the submittals have been turned in. They have reviewed most of the submittals. That's the only part of it, though, that I really know that I can speak to.
Okay. But as you're sitting here today, I guess you're comfortable that what we have in reserves for architectural fees going forward, that we're okay, barring, and I understand there's going to be unanticipated things that are going to come up, but of course, but you try to plan the best that you can, which we did, I guess, on the front end when we did the budget. I'm just trying to figure out if those plans changed. Do we need to start thinking about addressing that, or are we okay right now?
Well, if you remember at the last meeting, we had this discussion with Hewlett Spencer, and the board, the understanding we left with was there was a motion made by Mr. Moore and seconded by Mr. Pennings to allow Hewlett Spencer to handle architectural services they be needed as the Central High School project is being completed, as long as those services follow the change order requirements using remaining funds allocated in the architectural services portion of the Fund 177 budget. That's what we're talking about. So again, because you all have asked Mr. Hewlett, you all have approved Mr. Hewlett handling that, I'd prefer for him to answer that question.
Okay. All right.
I guess to go along with Mr. Bates' point there, I guess that was getting back to what I was asking. If we're looking at, we have a finite amount of money to spend on architectural services. And I know you keep saying that SSOE says they're at a certain percentage, but it doesn't look like that the facility is at that percentage, nor do the documents we've got say that we're at. I mean, are we comfortable going with that? Because again, if we're talking about a 15% swing here, if I'm not mistaken on the numbers, and what the difference is of completion, that may be 15% of the allocated money for architectural services we may very well need to finish this project. I think that's what Mr. Bates is getting to. I mean, that's the reason I just want to be very clear that we feel we're comfortable with that amount that they're asking for. I know they invoiced us for it, but I would rather have some kind of assurance that we really are at that point in the project.
May I speak to
Yes.
that, Mr. Chairman? I don't think we can give you that assurance. The $170,000 that's remaining, SSOE would have finished the project for that because they did the submittals on the front end, and a lot of their construction administration work was front-loaded in that regard. Could we say that another architectural firm is going to come in and finish it out for that same amount of money without having the background and the knowledge on that initial work? I don't know, and maybe Mr. Hewlett can say, but that's the situation we're in, is that they've already performed that work. Can somebody now step into their shoes and finish out the project for that amount of money? I don't know that Mr. Breeden or I could tell you that, but that's the situation that we're looking at, that amount of money is left, but there may be some duplication of effort with another architect going in and looking back and seeing what's been done to this point.
Well, I guess my concern was that if SSOE were to come to us and say we're 49% complete, and that's what the amount, that's how we're calculating, versus they walk in and say we're 79% complete, do we have any way to really calculate that? Because it sounds like we don't feel like construction is at that point. Are they just picking a percentage that they feel like and we're going with it?
And I will tell you, I just double-checked. I wanted to make sure I had this calculation. Through the end of June, we had paid Hewlett Spencer $21,766,436.03, which is 50.5% of the GMP. $21,766,436.03.
Okay.
That's 51% of the GM.
And again, I understand that some of their work was front-loaded as an architectural firm. I'm just a little, I guess, not sure, can they just pick a percentage and say they're at it and start calculating funds based on it? Or
Well,
do we have any
they-
kind of check and balance on that at all?
They actually had sent a schedule in December, I think, laying out how that would be. Now, Mr. Hibben had put that into a spreadsheet that was on like the third tab, and quite frankly, we didn't see that.
Okay.
He'd sent an updated budget, and then he reminded us of that. So they did send us a schedule saying, here's how we're going to bill. They laid it out in December, and they have billed according to that schedule.
Okay.
So
That seems to make a little more sense.
But my answer to your question would be no. I mean, we can't, as we sit here tonight, we can't be 100% sure that they've done 60% of that work.
Okay.
But what we can do is when another architect comes in to take over, if that other architect says, no, we've had to go back and do a lot of work that they should have been at this point, then we've got a claim against SSOE for billing us for work they haven't done.
Okay. So we do have a schedule.
Yes.
And so we at least, you can use that to reference to
And
your
that
point
schedule
there.
is in this packet that we gave you.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better about it. Mr. Pennings?
I don't know if Stan can answer this or Mr. Hewlett. Do we have all the paperwork that is actually our paperwork? Do we have all that from SSOE? Has that all been turned over to us?
They have delivered to us all the electronic drawings for the plans. Yes, sir. Now, they gave it to me and said, this is it. We have not passed that off to another architect to review to make sure it's it. So we're taking their word, but they delivered to us a package of, we've got paper drawings, and then they delivered a package of, here's a DVD with all the drawings on it, but I'm not qualified to say. And we've not given that to another architect. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should give that to the firm that you're working with. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to be assured that we have everything that we're supposed to have from SSOE before we give them everything they're supposed to have.
And that's why we've held off on this final payment, to make sure everybody's in agreement. That's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Construction administration are many more things than just where they are right now. And I'll give you one example. I can give you more, but I'll give you one example. At 100% completion of the architect's fees, they are supposed to deliver to us as-built drawings. We don't have as-builts on the 54% that they've completed. So they, in one sense, shouldn't even be paid for 54% except that you don't expect that until the end of the job, and it's all paid. So for them to impute an additional 10% or whatever over what they've actually done and what's been completed, and say it's based on submittals that they've been given to this point, that's part of the flow of it. But what we haven't gotten on 54% is something they're supposed to deliver at the end. And I would presume that they're not going to do that. And so we're going to have, if you want them, somebody's going to have to be paid to do that. And that's what this construction administration money's for. So for them to take more money at this point, then you're not going to have enough money to do everything we need to do for you. So, plus to pay them architect's fees for $217,000 that we were put in the position of having to spend because of a design decision that they made unilaterally, and now they want a fee on it too. I could give you a few more, but I think you wanted to condense your meeting, so.
I would just like to ask Mr. Williver, or anybody else, if we should have these drawings as you just said we should have, why should we pay them, or is there anything that we can do to say we're not going to pay you until you give us the product we're supposed to have? You know, I can't see paying them all that money if we don't have what we're supposed to have from them. Seems to me if you want your right hand to know what your left hand's doing, listen to the music, pay the band.
I think that's why it's on the agenda for you tonight, is for you to give us some guidance as to what you want us to do. But as far as what they said they were going to bill us on the front of the project and where they are today, I mean, their own percentage-wise. If you tell us to hold money back in reserve until the end to see what's going to be left, I mean, we will do what you tell us to do. But as far as contractually, I mean, they've sent us an invoice, and Mr. Breeden is asking you, should he pay it or not pay it? I can say there are potential problems if you hold back funds. My first choice would be to pay them and then come back at the end and make a claim if you're not happy with the work that you got or if there's some kind of shortfall. But you may choose to hold back funds if you want to. That's something that you can do. Like I said, my first choice would be to tell you, pay the invoices as they are, and then at the end of the job, then you look and see if you got what you paid for and go after them accordingly. That's up to the board.
I guess, the difficulty for us members on the committee is we don't know. We're all part-timers. We're here, for a few hours on this particular Thursday once a month, and we've got this packet that we've went through. At the end of the day, I personally don't know whether it should be paid or not, because I'm not, I haven't studied the terms of the contract. I haven't studied the invoices. I have to rely upon you all to make a recommendation to us whether we should or shouldn't pay this. So that's on this particular matter. I guess going forward, what I did want to ask is, I looked over the, I guess it's Brian Ross report. And in that particular report, they tell us, this is what's being submitted for payment. This represents 55% of the contract. And they agree that the contracted work, quote, we agree the contracted work is approximately 55% complete. So, I mean, we actually have some documentation. We've got this much in invoices being submitted to us. We have a third-party company that's telling us, yes, it's that much completed. And I guess this is part of the learning process that we're all having to go through. But in the future, going forward, if we do this the correct way with the guaranteed maximum price with the architect being under that price, would the architect also be subject to review of this Brian Ross review just like any other vendor? Okay. Because then we have something definitive, and we have another company looking over the shoulders of everybody to see, yes, we're paying out this amount and we got this amount of work. So. But as far as this particular, whether we pay it or not, I don't know. I'm going to have to rely upon what you all recommend to us.
Well, at this point, I just checked what we had paid them. We actually, based on what they're showing as a final amount billed and what we've actually paid them, we have $146,159.63 that we still owe them. That's how much money we haven't, because we paid them. The last payment we made to them was in March. So since March, they're billing us for an additional, if I did the math right, and I think I did here. Yes.
And don't get me wrong, if we owe somebody the money, if they've done the work, by all means, we need to pay them immediately. I guess that's what I'm looking to you all to tell us, okay, is this for work that has been completed, it is pursuant to the contract, let's pay it.
And again, based on my understanding, and that's why I will lean on Mr. Hewlett's experience. Obviously, that's why we've hired somebody in his position to be able to come in and help us with these kind of things. Outside of the as-built drawings, I do not know what else they would owe us for that they haven't done. I certainly can make contact with them and ask for as-built drawings on the amount of work that was, which would basically be the Phase 1 construction, because that's what was completed before they left the job. Wouldn't that be correct? So we can pursue as-built drawings for them before we pay this bill?
Let me maybe propose this, because we just got this information, I think.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Mr.
Today,
Hibden.
I think.
Yeah, Mr. Hibden actually sent this email to me, was it yesterday? We got it.
And I would think it would be very reasonable for them to allow us to digest this, since this is going to be the final payment. We just want to make sure, okay, we're good with this before we write the check. Why don't we just wait and put this on the agenda for next month? And that way, you all have time to study it. We've raised some issues, some questions. You all can explore that, and you all can make a definitive recommendation to us. Yes, no, this part, maybe. I mean, you can break it down for us. Now, again, I don't want to hold up any vendor. Are there any portions of their invoices, though, there's no question at all that we should go ahead and pay? Or do we need to go ahead and wrap this up together and look at it, review it all together?
There are, basically, it's for the construction administration fee, so there is not any vendor to them that they've billed us for that are on any of these bills that they would need to pay. So it would just be the money for their remaining work. So I think we should probably wait until we've satisfied everything, and that's why we wanted to bring it to you.
So,
And again, we had intended to have this much sooner, but we got into this. And
I understand.
So we just got
Understand.
that from Mr.
Well, so, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest the committee take no action, and then nothing will happen, and they go have to put it back on the agenda for next month.
Mr. Pennings?
I would agree with Mr. Bates, but in the meantime, I would like Mr. Breeden to contact SSOE and tell them we want those drawings.
Yes, sir.
I guess to go with what Mr. Pennings is saying there, not just the drawings, I just want to make sure a couple of things, that we are confident that what we're getting to this point, that we're getting everything we're paying for. I don't know how to, again, as Mr. Bates said, I don't know how to get to that point. I don't know what the correct answer is. I just want you guys to be able to bring us up to saying, we're paying this amount and we got everything we're paying for. I guess is where I would look for us to be when this comes back to us next month. And if not, if there's some reason why we need to do something different or give us some action, just let us know what action you would recommend us to take at that point.
Could I,
Any other comments on that one?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If that's actually, I'd say the best way to know is to ask the new architect to give us a status. I mean, we can see contractually we're on a certain month and they're entitled to a certain amount, but until that new architect steps in and looks and says, well, no, they're behind, or no, they're ahead, I don't know that there's any way that Mr. Breeden and I can know for sure and put you at ease on that. So if that's what the board's wish is, then might I suggest that the new architect at least make some kind of initial look into it and tell us what percentage that they believe the project is as far as the administration, and then that would help us come back to you with a more definitive answer. Because like I said, contractually, I think they're at the right point, but that's on the basis of time, not so much work. If Mr. Hewlett is saying that there's additional work that should be done or is backloaded, then maybe if the architect can help us get to that, then we can make a more informed decision.
Is that something that just Stan and his people would be able to handle and coordinate, or I'm not sure what action we would need to take on that?
I don't think there's any action necessary
Okay.
as long as Mr. Hewlett's comfortable in doing that, and at least being able to bring us something back or get that to Mr. Breeden where he could report back as far as what's actually been done as opposed to what's left to be done.
Okay. Well, we can definitely, if we need to clarify that anymore, definitely, I think we can just push this off to the next meeting, and if we need to gather any more information, we'll make that happen. Okay, next item up is item C, the train report. Did we have anybody that want to do on the train? We can, I'm sorry. He was already talking to us, and I completely moved ahead. Let me back up to item B, Hewlett Spencer Bell report. Everybody has that one in there. I believe in speaking to them, I didn't see anything out of place. Does anyone have any questions on that? I believe obviously we had the ribbon cutting grand opening for everyone to get to make it to the facility. I don't believe there's any exceptions going on at this point. I think there may have been some issues with HVAC, but those are being addressed.
The whole team's working on that.
Okay.
And they know what if I may say, that they know what the problem is or the cause. Maybe it's better to say they know what the cause is, and they are working, they know what the solution needs to be, and they're working on it achieving it.
Okay. And again, I would assume that with a project like this, there would be some things that would pop up like that, right, when you start occupying a building. So this seems kind of normal. I don't see any concerned faces in the crowd, so.
It is not abnormal.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the central project at this point? Or for Mr. Hewlett? Mr. Bates?
I guess just for, I would like to have, I guess, some understanding of what the HVAC system issues are currently at Central, just from a layperson's perspective. Yes, and maybe a little bit of a, maybe an expected timetable for addressing those issues.
The issue really is humidity, and there are two things that have been causing the humidity issue, and one of them is the ASHRAE, or the federal standard that requires fresh air, and the equipment that delivers that fresh air has been running 24 hours a day, and it only needs to be running from just a little before school starts till afterwards, but 24 hours a day, it's been pumping more air with more humidity in it into the school. So they're changing that timing. That's one thing. The other thing is that some of the equipment is a little bit, or maybe even greatly oversized. We're determining all of that. And when cooling equipment is too small, it will never cool. So you really wouldn't want it to be too small. And it's not unusual to maybe oversize it a little bit. But if it's oversized a lot, then what happens is the equipment cools the air before the humidity has time to be removed. Therefore, the humidity is what makes it heat back up faster. So that's what's going on right now. Some of that equipment is that we've determined their calculations that they used when they calculated the size of the equipment were too generous to have the equipment. So it's cycling too frequently. It gets the air cooled real quickly, and then the heat that's still in because of the humidity that hadn't been removed heats it back up. There are several different ways to address that. The whole team is working on that. They have just this week put, as a matter of fact, yesterday and today, put some equipment in that will be monitoring and measuring that, and that equipment is going to help tell us what exactly we need to do. But it's just stuff that has to be fixed.
So it sounds like just trying to fine tune all the humidity controls, and almost sounds like trying to fine tune a carburetor, Mr. Moore. I don't know, but
That's right. And the test equipment is like the kind of equipment that a mechanic would put on the carburetor and the whole, determine what they need to turn.
and so as far as a time frame, is this something that
The time
looks
frame
like,
is that they're out there every day working on it, checking the test equipment and making the adjustments. And I will tell you that one high school that it took 2 or 3 months really to get it down to where there were no issues. It was all done. Usually it takes 2 weeks to a month to do it.
okay.
Do you want to jump in on that one, how long it'll take?
And,
It's hard.
well,
There
but
you-
the reason
okay.
the reason I ask is
It's just really difficult to
Right.
tell you that it's going to, day after tomorrow or 3 weeks from now. It just, you have to stay on it every
Right.
day. Because the test equipment, we may have to move it around.
Right.
Some of this is subjective to how the teacher that's in the classroom feels about it. And so some of what we're trying to do is make human beings comfortable according to whether they're hot-natured or cold-natured. So
Right.
there's
And-
some subjectivity to
Right.
what we're trying to do.
And I don't know what, how it's affecting specifically the occupants of the building right now. I've just seen a little bit on Twitter, but, and I don't know how reliable Twitter is, but the reason I do ask is it is August. It is, pretty bad. And so I just just want to be able to try to have some idea, is this going to be done within the next week or so, or could it be months that we have to buy new equipment and replace it?
Oh, no, there's not going to, there's no need for doing that.
Okay,
No, it's adjustments.
okay. All right, thank you.
I mean, I'll let you know that I walked the building yesterday, and everything appeared fine. There were no kids, and I saw kids in the hallway giving them high fives, talking to them, how's school going, what do you think? Love the building, love the desk, everything great. Nobody was complaining about the conditions in the classrooms. So I think Mr. Hewlett's exactly right. How can you fine tune it based on the temperatures that the teachers want? That's the tough one, because everybody's different. But the kids seem happy.
Okay. And just to go back a little, I hate to bring this back up. You said they in the design of this, I'm assuming architects on that as well? Or is it someone else?
Well, that's where the initial calculation.
Okay, just wondering. Does anyone have any other questions on the central project? Mr. Pennings?
I don't have a question. I just want to say from the open house we had, I have had nothing but glowing remarks about the new building from both students and parents, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. And now we can move on to item C, the train report. Everyone has had a chance to look at that in the packet. If you want to give us a brief rundown of what you got there, or if there's any exceptions or anything that stands out to you at this point.
No, there's not. It's red, but there's really nothing other than what's a report. We finished up on the controls on Spring Hill Elementary. It was shown not complete. The work's complete. We haven't walked it with the county and signed off or had the owners training on that. We have equipment ordered for Horse Porter kitchen and the Cox concession unit. I think Horse Porter shipped yesterday or today, so we'll be installing that in the next week or so.
Any board members have any questions on any of these? Sounds like everything's moving along. Oh, Mr. Beaver.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about the loop cleaning at Culleoka? I mean, I know it's been going on a while, and I know it's going
Yes,
to take
sir.
a while, but just,
Well, you asked specifically about Culleoka. I know until recently, they were cleaning the filters in that powered filtration about twice a week. At Culleoka and at Spring Hill High, they backed down to once a week on it, so it's starting to see some improvements. The other 4 schools are still cleaning it twice a week,
okay,
so we are seeing some improvements.
so we're making improvements on it. Yeah, I knew it was a mess when you started. It
Yes,
was
sir.
very bad condition. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. I
welcome.
appreciate it. All right, the next item was the D, project cost report.
Mr. Chairman, the report's there. You can see we have several projects that are ongoing. We'll be glad to answer any questions that we need to about those. But there's work being done on all the items that are in green. Some of the others we're continuing to work on getting bids on. We've got one of those to present to you tonight to talk about. Some of the others, quite frankly, we're still waiting to see how we're going to go on the direction with the rest of the funds that the county approves. Some of those things might need, like for instance, we've got some gutter repair that needs to be done at some schools where there is also some money for some roof repair at those schools. So it might make more sense to wait and do the gutter repair when you're doing the roof. We just didn't have the funding before to do that. We might now have the funding, so we're kind of waiting on those things to see. But we are moving forward on the things that we've got here.
All right. Any board members have any questions on that? Mr. Bates.
I was just going to say, Mr. Breeden, I appreciate you thinking like that, where we can maybe combine some things and maybe try to save some taxpayer money, so definitely appreciate that.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we can go ahead and move on to item number 5, the Train Building Advantage 179D Energy Tax Allocation.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory in the letter, but basically Train has presented us with this. This is an opportunity that they have Since obviously we're a non-taxed entity, we can't apply for these tax credits for energy savings. They have asked us to give them permission to use the work they did for us at Whitthorne to apply for these. And then they've said if they get them, they'll share 25% of those savings with us. We ran that by our legal counsel. We also, Mr. Wooliver suggested we send that to state auditors. Both have told us that it is legal to do that. We have both of them who've given us ruling on that. So we're just asking you, it does need your approval for us to allow Train to do that.
Okay.
You didn't try to negotiate us up to 35, did you?
No, sir, I
I
didn't.
appreciate
I
that.
can go back and try. if you
Mr.
want.
Pennings, I appreciate that, but I was really looking for 50. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
Okay. So I guess in motion form, but just to approve, how would this need to be worded? Just approve the agreement. Okay. As Mr. Woolver pointed out, just, so a motion would need to be made to approve the agreement on the tax allocation,
Make a motion to approve.
which Mr. Pennings has so graciously just done, and Mr. Bates has seconded. Okay, any discussion on that? All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that does pass. Okay, next one is item 6, bid number 17-009, the weekly mat service.
we presented to you back when we were going through the budget process that we were adding amount into our budget for mat service. We had gotten a estimate from our custodial contractor, GCA, about adding that in with their services. Once the budget was passed, we looked at what they presented. They gave us a firm bid. We also contacted Airmark because we have a contract with them for uniform services. Pretty much, GCA was using, there's two primary companies who do this, Centos and Airmark. They are using Centos. We contacted Airmark. They actually have a state contract price, and theirs came in cheaper. The amount, the other amount was about $28,000. This was 18, so we're recommending, and then they would, we would actually put mat service in at all of our schools, which we feel like we need to do to improve the cleanliness of the schools, walk their dirt off the floor. Now that's hit or miss. It's left up school to school, and they would actually change them out every week for this price. And we've gone through and surveyed the schools. This is all exterior doors at all schools.
Oh, okay.
And the money is in the budget now because we included that.
So, do we have a motion to approve this bid? So, okay, we have a motion and a second. And the motion was from Ms. Parker, by the way, and seconded by Mr. Bates. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that does pass unanimously. Okay, next item is bid number 17-001, annual bleacher inspection.
Bleacher inspection is not something that we have done on a regular basis. It is being recommended to us by several sources. It is not required by the state and is not required by our insurance company, but is encouraged. As we've surveyed other schools, districts, we found most other school districts are doing it. There is a certain amount of inherent liability on our part if there is a bleacher failure and we've not had an inspection or done the repair that was needed that an inspection would have uncovered. And so we feel like it would be prudent to begin the process of inspecting again. We've talked to just about every surrounding school district, and they do. As a matter of fact, we are recommending that we piggyback on a bid that Williamson County Schools did with bleachers and seats. They're the primary company in Middle Tennessee who does this work. They're the ones that most of the others are using. I did not bring a survey. I could get you one of the other school districts we talked with. We talked to several when we were at the Tennessee Plant Managers Conference, Tennessee School Plant Management Conference this summer. But we feel like it'd be prudent to do that. We did not budget any money for this. However, in the insurance budget, if you all remember, we came back with a very favorable bid. So we actually have in our property insurance line item about $80,000. Our insurance came in about $80,000 less than we budgeted. So we're recommending that we would do a transfer. I know we don't like that word budget amendment, but the money's sitting there. We would recommend transferring over this amount of money here. Was it an even? I think that's a typo on the letter. I apologize. It's $10,200, and the letter says a grand total of $10,000. So we would need to correct that. It's $10,200 for the, and we would contract with bleachers and seats, and you can see the bleachers that they would be inspecting. Of course, this does not include repairs. Any repairs that would be determined we would need to do, and we would try to do that through our normal maintenance budget. If it came back that they were exorbitant, that we needed to come back to you and talk about capital repairs, we would do that, but we would try to address those.
Mr. Pennings?
I agree we should do the bleacher inspections, but if we're going to do a contract for this company, I'd like to see the contract where there's something in there that if they say something is wrong with the bleachers and we fix them and the bleachers still fail, okay, we did what you said. You said the bleachers were safe, they failed. What recourse do we have? You know, I'd like to see the contract before I approve a certain company.
We can get that language. I apologize. We didn't, all we've got is just their cost estimate here to do bleacher inspections, but we can get that wording.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a contract come through. Were they gonna supply one? Stan, were they gonna send us a contract to look at?
You talked to them, Dave. I don't know. What did you talk to them about? Were they gonna send us a contract for this? Do we have a contract document that goes along with this?
I believe that the contract that we're piggybacking on is the same one from Williamson County.
So we can get the one.
We
that-
have the contract.
Yeah, we can
I
get
have a
that for
copy
you.
of the contract. And we do have approval from the Williamson County Purchasing Manager to piggyback on it.
So if you would prefer, I mean, we can get that and bring that back to you next month, if that's what you prefer.
I would like to, if you don't mind, if we can.
And
have
we can send it to
the
Mr. Wolliver to review and then bring it back to you.
That would be good. And again, because I had several questions about the contract too. Is this just a 1 year? I mean, what are we required to do? And I guess legally, the other question is if there are faults found, if they find things, what is our requirement based on what they find? You don't have to answer that right now. I'm just saying, those are the kind of things I'm thinking through that would probably be in a contract. And I did see, the only thing I see on here, the estimate's valid for 90 days, as long as, I mean, I haven't looked at the calendar. Are we still good if this comes back to the next facilities meeting and we're not going to run out of this being expired, are we? I don't believe so. I think we're good. I just want to make sure on that, on the bid. But if you could just bring that back to us at the next facilities meeting, that would be, I think, appropriate. Mr. Bates?
And I guess as part of exploring that, I had a question, is this something necessary to do on an annual basis, or is it something going to be biannual or every 3 years? And it may be the most prudent thing to do is to do it on an annual basis, but you may have a recommendation on that already, or you may want to think about that. And then the other thing is, once this company does the inspection, will they have a detailed report for each one of the schools that will go to you all? Is that how it will work? Okay.
The one concern that I have is earlier this summer, we did do an inspection for Whitthorne because we've had some problems and issues with the rollers. One of the things that we're still waiting for is a wiring harness, which many of these has to be custom made, so there is a delay in getting some of these parts and things like that. And the other issue on a lot of these bleachers, especially at Whitthorne and some of the others, there are no side rails or handrails, that go down the middle, and we're going to be coming into basketball season. So I just want to kind of reiterate that this is just for an inspection. All they're going to do is give us a report of what they assess that needs to get done. Then we can go to see, do we want to have it done?
And related to that, I was going to ask, when EMG, when they went in and to do their inspections, did they look at bleachers as well and make any recommendations on those?
Yes, there are some line items for bleacher repairs.
Okay. So and that was actually another question I guess I had. Would it be necessary to do an inspection right now. If we had EMG just complete an inspection, but I didn't know how detailed they were. And looking at this company may do a little bit more in-depth inspection. So that was another question I had.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you. Well, I too would like to see the contract pertaining as to what this particular company is going to do. But I do believe we need to have our bleachers inspected. But also, we need to be prepared when they're inspected and we find problems. We're either going to need to be prepared to make those repairs, or we're going to have to shut the bleachers down. So you know, when we have this inspection done, there's probably going to be some items that they say we need to take action on, and so we need to start thinking about taking action once we get the report back.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. So, any other comments on that? Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and plan on deferring this to the next facilities meeting and just bring that back to us with, I guess, taking the comments into account and look into some of those other answers. Okay, the next item we had here was the one we added, and it's the loose furnishings for Central High School. And again, I believe there was a handout for this. If anybody doesn't have access to it, I think there's a physical handout that you can get a copy of. Did we take all of your copies?
If that's okay, I can read it from the screen. I will, let me speak to that. Right now, we have completed Phase 1 and 2 of our furnishings budget. If you'll remember, with the money allocated by the county for the construction of Central High School, they also allocated money. It's a little over $1 million for furnishings. After completing Phase 1 and 2, the furnishings contractor who's working with us is really, she gave us a preliminary estimate. We set a budget for each phase. And so based on the Phase 1 and Phase 2 budgets, because we have actually come in $42,610.45 under budget. But there continues to be little things that you just don't know till you get there. Like we walked through the other day, and in the culinary classroom, there's two rooms. There's a dining facility, and there's a classroom, which is a kitchen with tables, and there are no stools around those tables. It's designed for the students to stand and prepare food, but that's also the classroom where when the teacher lectures, they sit at those tables, so we would like to add stools. There's a few situations where we put one file cabinet in an office and they come back and say, man, we had two before. We really need two. So there are little things like that we've bought along the way. A couple of issues that have come up is we found out in the design, the architect designed built-in workstations for all the administrative people, the secretaries throughout the school, but they just built a counter. They didn't build any drawer space underneath. So we had to come back and buy cabinets with drawers to go underneath. We also got in and realized we didn't put any trash cans in the hallways. And so those things, we've actually come back and asked the executive committee to approve so we could get those done, and we've issued POs. But we thought it might be easier just to ask you to go ahead and approve a PO not to exceed $42,000 for the rest of this money, just to finish up those little odds and ends that we found. Probably won't be all of it, and any we don't spend, we'll roll into future. We'll have it left over. We still got phases 3, 4, and 5 to go, which is the cafeteria, gym, band room, those kind of things. So, but it might just expedite things if we could do that. So we were asking if you go ahead and approve just to issue a purchase order to Ernie Morris for $42,000 to finish out Phase 1 and 2, but it'd be up to, and we'll be diligent not to try to, because we know if we roll it over to the next phase.
Okay. And again, to be clear, this is all already in the
It's all the
central
money
project.
that is
It was
budgeted.
all supposed to be spent on these things anyway.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Pennings is again being gracious and offering a motion to that effect, that we would allow basically an open PO to Ernie Morris Enterprises for up to the $42,610.45.
That's correct.
To it as these come up. And again, you would just include these as FYI items, I guess, on
Yes, sir,
at later
we would.
meetings of when you make purchases. Okay. So we have a motion on that. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second by Ms. Parker. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that does pass unanimously. Okay, moving on to the next item, the third-party facilities construction alteration procedure. I believe, and I had talked with Stan a little bit about these. I think we had these on here. I'm not sure if there's really, since these are procedures, I'm not really, there's really no need for us to take any action on this. These are kind of FY. Does anyone have any comments on that, though, having read through it or looked at it? I think in previous meetings, we've instructed the department to try and put some of these things that we've talked about into procedures, and I'm very happy to see them put these in place. And I think they're just trying to share them with us, and that they are meeting the things we've been asking them to do. I guess that actually would go for the next item as well, the key control procedures. I know we talked about keys. Again, this is being included as an FYI. I don't see any reason to take any action on it since it's a procedure, and they may need to modify these procedures as they see fit and as they need to adjust to anything. So, again, on both of those, the third-party facility construction or the key control procedures, does anyone have any questions or for Stan on that or any comments? Okay. We can go ahead and move on to the next one, the civil site design proposal.
We have gone out to a civil site design group, and these were items that were addressed in the EMG report of these 8 different schools. And so they came back to us, and after surveying the different schools and their findings, and these are the reports that they, and I believe these are the reports, as you see in here, from the individual schools. If you look at the estimated fees, they exceeded the $60,000. We went back to them and asked them if they could reassess those and look at them. And if they said they could come and do these all at once, they'd save on a lot of travel time and save time. So we got them down to the $60,000 and plus the $6,100 for reimbursables. So that's right in budget with what the EMG project or assessment was. So we're recommending that we have them be approved so that we can start finding out more of what we need to do on our facilities and our drainage sites.
And let me just add, Mr. Chairman, and I know Ms. Charles would say this, but just a point of clarification, make sure everybody understands. This is what EMG recommended, that we hire a civil engineer to assess, and they will assess the situation and develop a plan to repair it. But then we will have to bid the work to be done. So this does not pay for the work. This just pays for developing a plan to fix the drainage issues we have at these sites that were identified by EMG. And that's what they recommended we start with by hiring a
And if I'm not mistaken on some of the, I mean, most of these, I know EMG identified some of these, but there were some of these that have been long-standing issues that we've been well aware of as a board for some time.
And one example is the Spring Hill High School. We talked to you before about the hallway with the block and the inch gap up at the top. And what they've got to do is go in and look at the soils and dig and figure out, why is this happening? So that's what their plan would be.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this proposal for the total of $66,100? Oh. We have a motion by Mr. Dudley and Mr. Beaver, seconded that. Discussion on that, Mr. Bates?
Yes, once we get these plans, we own them, we can bid them out to other companies, is that correct? And I guess as far as what EMG's recommendations are, in some ways, this is long-term to try to save money. If we can tackle some of these drainage issues, if it's one of those things, if we don't do it, it could end up costing us a lot of money later on. So I do like us being proactive. It's good, thanks.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. All in favor of approving this proposal for the civil site design for the total of $66,100, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that does pass unanimously on that. Okay, the next one was another one we added was an HVAC update, and I think Stan's ready to talk on this some. Basically, as we're coming into a new school year, obviously, you start turning everything back on. We're going to run into a few issues and hiccups here and there. I was wondering if you could kind of give us a rundown across the system of where we're at and how those are being addressed.
Just give me a chance to stand up a minute. As you can imagine, when we come back after being off for the summer, we start school at the very hottest part of the year. And this year, I think everybody would agree, with the humidity and the heat is especially, probably some of you have experienced it at home. This really challenges HVAC equipment. And when you've got a building that you haven't had everybody in every room, sometimes you don't know, hey, in this room we've got it. So as we get back in school, there's always issues. One of the things that, if I can, I'll use my term I use with our staff a lot, chase a skinny rabbit with you just a minute. We have just implemented our zone teams, where we've got now a zone supervisor for our north zone, our central zone, and those guys are doing a fabulous job of taking ownership of those schools. The three gentlemen, Scott Cheek is the zone crew leader for our north zone. Ricky Haskins is the zone crew leader for our central zone. Todd Westmoreland is the zone crew leader for our south zone. They have really, and so what they each did, I asked them for some information. They each put together a report for me of what they've done at every school on HVAC since school started, which is pretty neat. There have been issues, classroom to classroom, there have been issues there. There are no large issues that we have going. The most challenging places, we had some issues at both Spring Hill Middle School and Marvin Wright Elementary with the heat exchanger on our cooling tower. The cooling tower cools the water that serves the whole building. It flows through and I'm very non-technical on this, but obviously through a plate and frame, right?
Yeah, it's a big radiator.
Big radiator. Heat exchanger, and it gets stopped up. So we have to go through and clean that out. So they've done a lot. So as we were just getting school started, a lot of complaints. You have to troubleshoot and find out. We have learned a process from Train. Actually, last year, Train came in and unstopped the one at Spring Hill Middle. This year, our maintenance staff unstopped the one at Spring Hill Middle from what Train taught us to do and the equipment they taught us to buy. And I'm really excited about that our guys have taken on that responsibility. We did one thing on those heat exchangers. You've got the loop side, you've got the cooling tower side. We unstopped the cooling tower side at Marvin Wright, but Scott tells me in his notes here he's found that he's got to do an unstop on the loop side because we continue. What was happening is it was cooling in the morning, but in the afternoon, as it got hotter in the day, we were losing some of that. So he's actually, I think he may be up there right now running that because he said he was going to do it this evening after school was out. And those guys have been doing some of that, working on Saturdays and evenings to knock some of that out. We have had some challenges with some units at Marvin Wright, particularly that serve the cafeteria. There's some repairs that have gone on. There's one of those that we've brought Train in. One of the things that you've allowed us to do, we now have money in our budget, actually you provided is some of those one-time purchases where we set up some money specifically to bring Train in for some specialized kind of repairs, so they're good to work with. We had the same kind of situation right as school was starting back at Spring Hill Elementary, the chiller. We had a problem with the chiller. Our guys went and did some troubleshooting. They said this is a little more complicated because chillers are very complicated. And so Train came in. They helped us do that repair on the chiller. We got everything working back there. We've had some challenges with the chiller at Mount Pleasant High School. Also, Train has come in and helped us with those as well. But other than a classroom by classroom, kind of this unit, a fan motor went out, or this unit, we had to replace this or that. So far, over district-wide, we do not have any schools that don't have air or don't have any issues, but we still have classroom, and we got some parts ordered that still hadn't come in on this unit that we have in a couple of classrooms where we know there's a long-term situation work on. We're putting window air conditioning, and we're borrowing from the supply that Train left for us because they put some in at Culleoka. We've been able to take some of those out as we've made some of those repairs, but we're using those in other places. So we're trying to stay on top of it. Also, we're in the process at some of our schools. We've turned on the new energy management program, where we now have a set point. That air condition is set between 72 and 76. In some of those classrooms, teachers were used to running it at 68 or 66, and they're saying, hey, it's hot in here. But most of you know, I mean, at my house, I keep my thermostat on 74 in the summer. That may be cooler than some of you. I don't know. My wife complains a lot about it sometimes, but that's what we do to save money. And so that's what we're doing in the schools, and again, not running them down at 68 or 66. So unless there's a specific question about a specific situation, I'll try to answer that from the notes that they've provided for me.
All right, I appreciate that, Stan. I do appreciate it. Sounds like some of the changes we've been made in that department have really, the zone, it sounds like it's working great. I'm pretty excited to see that you are able to quickly, you know, I brought this to you a couple of days ago, and you were able to quickly get some reports from those technicians, and it sounds like some pretty detailed reports. And I understand, I'm sure some of the other board members have also gotten some contacted by parents about issues from room to room, with the understanding that we have hundreds of thousands of square feet of heating and cooling going on every single day here. And as nice as it would be, it's literally impossible to have every room heating and cooling perfectly at all times. And it sounds like you guys are working on it, and we're making the right moves and the right repairs as they come up and as we're able to address them. So I appreciate you getting that report. Any questions or comments? Mr. Beaver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Braden, you know, I'm glad to hear that, you know, the technicians are stepping up. And, but how's the training program? How is it going?
We are continuing to work with Train on that. We also, in the budget, of course, you approved for us some additional positions. If you will look at this weekend's paper, you will see we have an ad in the paper for 4 maintenance. We have for a lead HVAC maintenance person. And we're doing more than just advertising the paper. We're also doing some social media and some other things. Our human resource department's helping us to do that. We have 2 HVAC technicians. One of those because we lost somebody who left, and another one is we transferred. You all actually approved a plumber. We transferred one of our people into a plumber's job, and we're hiring another HVAC. So we're hiring some, and the new lead person will help. But we're continuing to work with Train on training from what they've helped us with. And then we're looking at outside sources to do some too. But with these new, and moving into these zone crews, and one of the things that the lead HVAC guy will have regular monthly trainings for our HVAC technicians as a group. So we're working on it. We're not there, but we're working on it.
Good. All right, thanks, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on that? All right, Mr. Breeden, I appreciate it on that one. I guess you can may want to stay up here, or I don't know who's going to handle the next one, but the next item we do have is the update on the attendance numbers.
If I may, I don't normally do this, but this is hot off the press, and I couldn't even get it handed out before the meeting. I'll maybe just let you start out here with Parker and pass these down. This, I'm going to keep one if I may, because I don't even know that I have a copy of that. But we did update our attendance numbers yesterday, as far as gathered them in the central office, and we got a copy of it today. And so we've updated a chart here, and I don't know, Jerry, can you blow that up a little bit so we can put it up on just really get to that last. And one of the things is, as you know, we really don't feel like we have a good handle on attendance until the 20th day of school. So while we're gathering it, you know, there's still a lot of records being put in and accounting being done, because we got attendance last week that we sent you the numbers, and it showed our overall total of enrollment at 12,353. Well, by the one we got today, it's jumped to 12,518. And so you can see, looking at this from the last count that we got the end of school last year, that we're up significantly in several places. We're up the most significant, 90 students at Spring Hill High School, 83 at Wright Elementary, 63 at Spring Hill Middle. That's really our biggest jumps. 21 at Whitthorne, 37 at Central High School. But we have got some schools that have declined. Right now, we're showing a decline. Brown Elementary is showing a decline from the last day of school to the beginning of school of 18, Highland Park 16, Howell Elementary 15, McDowell Elementary 35, Mount Pleasant Elementary 34, Santa Fe 23, Spring Hill Elementary 28. But the overall increase is 253 students. Now, again, this includes everything, including pre-K enrollment. So this is just show you how many students are in our building. So again, the overall enrollment is growing. Obviously, it's growing the most in the Spring Hill area. And we did show you one report that we actually broke it down by region so you could see that. That has last week's numbers, not this week. But we'd be glad to try to answer any questions if we could on that.
Okay, I appreciate that, Stan. And to also further clarify, I know we're still, one of the things that we took up last month was when we looked at this, work partnering with Belmont on a 10-year plan. And I know one of the big things they're doing is looking at these capacity in use numbers. And I think that's probably a big variable that I know I personally will be very happy to see some research done on that to see if kind of where we're at. Because it is difficult to know. I think these numbers have just kind of been passed along through the decades in some instances, and I know the use of these schools has changed from year to year. So I think that may help us have a better picture as we move forward on that. So,
And if I could just comment on that, Mr. Hall and I met with Mr. Edgens this afternoon. We were in a hour and a half, 2-hour meeting with him today on that. And we talked to him about possibly bringing an update next month to this meeting, if you all like. Obviously, they're working on getting you a plan on the timetable they said, which was by December, of having a complete plan. But he talked about bringing you back an update possibly at next month's meeting. He has done a lot of work already that he was sharing with us, looking at both the assessment numbers, but also looking at capacity. And he has some real good things to talk about to you. And I won't steal his thunder by trying to get into everything we talked about today.
I would be more than happy to have him bring that to us next month
Yeah,
and go ahead and start. Because
but
I know
he's hard at work on that.
These are some pressing issues, and I think that's, I would be happy to not have to wait until December to talk about, especially that. If he can provide us with some better numbers as we're looking at our decisions, that would be great.
Okay.
Any board members have any questions on this? Mr. Bates.
I guess the things that stood out for me was the Marvin Wright numbers, 87. Originally, I guess the initial information was 87 more students than what we had last year as far as enrollment. Now I think it's been adjusted down to 83. But still, looking at the information you all have provided, that's 33 more than what the capacity or the current capacity is at that school. So I guess my first question is, what are we doing right now with that immediate issue?
Yeah, so trying to do the best we can with kids flowing in the door, because if you look over last year, what we had on the third day of school this year compared to the 20th day last year, we're up over 101 kids at Marvin Wright. Talking to Marissa Rassi, she's like, I'm almost glad they rezoned, because if not, they would be over capacity. So the music teacher I know is occupying the computer lab, and then the art teacher is now moving between classrooms to teach art. So we're do what? Switch that? Okay, so switch that. So whatever I said on audio, just switch that. So they're trying to accommodate general ed classrooms as much as they possibly can at this point. And we're adding 4 teachers to Marvin Wright.
And I guess, so immediate needs right now, we're moving some classrooms around. What about on the horizon? Because when I'm looking at these numbers, if there's 87 more kids this year, if we have approximately that number next year, even if the number stays stagnant, which I do not think it's going to stay stagnant. I think it's going to escalate. But if it just stays stagnant, that's going to put us 120 over the capacity. So are we already got, because I don't think we're going to be able to have a new school overnight at that particular area. Are we working on plans, not just what is the issue immediately, but in order to stopgap measures to get us to time to be able to have more capacity out in that area?
We discussed that with Mr. Edgens today
Okay.
and talked about the fact that, and he said as they come back and look at how we're zoned, and they will make all of that a part of their report, their final report. So we're hoping if we get that information by December, we can then start making plans. And whether that plan, obviously, we will not be able to build by the beginning of school next year. And the way the trends show, we will be over capacity at Marvin Wright when we begin, if not by the end of school this year, by the time we begin school next year. So our option, our options are going to be rezone, add portables. Probably that's the only two options we got. So, we'll have to look at the options and decide which one's going to be the best thing.
Because, it's already, it's close to September. Some of these things, we've got to start taking some actions now to start having things in place for next summer. As far as the planning process. And so that's the thing that I would just want to continue to emphasize is plan.
Yeah.
We've got to have these plans in place, and that way we can start then implementing plans, because these things take time. It's something that we can't snap our fingers and have a solution overnight. We've got to have these plans in place so that we can start addressing that. So that's the thing I wanted to emphasize. The other question I had was, I was looking at the Spring Hill Elementary School numbers that went down 27, and that's a head scratcher for me. What's y'all's understanding of that?
Have you had, I've not
Can-
had an opportunity to have a discussion to really look at
Just from what I understand, no new construction going in that's zoned for Spring Hill Elementary School. Everything Marvin Wright, you go to Marvin Wright, all you have to do is look to your left and there's construction. Look to your right, there's construction. But what's for zones for Spring Hill Elementary School is no current construction. So that's the head scratcher.
There is a lot of construction on the books in that area. Probably everybody, if you've driven up 31 the last few days, know they've just put in a new turn lane to the new subdivision that's putting in right there by the cemetery. That's a new development. There's a new development that's just been approved by the city of Columbia that's at the corner of Carter's Creek Station and Cleburne Lane. There's 400 and something homes, but it's just been approved. There is some construction going on there in Grove Park, the Honey Farm, the other one where the apartments are where you go in. Can't remember the name of it right now. So there is some there, but a lot of what will be Spring Hill Elementary Zone is just kind of hitting the books, just getting approved. So you haven't started to see that like you do at Marvin Wright, where that construction was all approved 2 or 3 years ago when the actual houses have come out of the ground and people are now moving into them. And
So there may just be the calm before the storm. And then the other question, or the thing that leaped out to me was Spring Hill Middle with an increase of 71 students. Of course, I think that number's been adjusted somewhat, but just looking at that, just extrapolating out, if next year, if there's another increase of 71, again, no changes, no escalation, it just stays stagnant as far as the increase. That puts us at 957 at that school, which is 95.7% of capacity next year. And then when you add on to that another year, then that's something else that, again, we've got to start having some plans in place. Now maybe there's a little bit more of a room to work with. But even that is, to me, a condensed timeline, because these things have to happen now in order to have things in place, possibly 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So,
I refer to Mr. Hewlett's comment to me about 6 months ago, you should have started building 2 years ago, because he's exactly right. But I'll also tell you, one of the things that sits with me is each month I go to the Economic Development Council with the Murray Alliance. So I kind of sit in there, and when I first came, I was giving Mr. Breeden paperwork, and it had permits being pulled in the southern region, Williamson County, Giles County stuff. Murray County would have 1 or 2 slots. I think the most recent paperwork I gave him to him had a page and a half of Murray County permits being pulled. And it's just going to continue. It's not going to slow down. I imagine in the next 6 months, it's going to go to 2 to 3 pages of permits being pulled by builders. So it's not going to go anywhere.
And whatever we can do, but just my biggest point is let's try to speed up that process as quickly as possible, the planning process, to escalate that as quickly as possible, because 1 month could make a huge difference, whether you're going to have that place, that facility ready for the start of school year, or nope, it's not ready until October.
Yeah.
And then that's just another complete disaster, potentially. So, to me, every week is critical. And some of the things that we need to start trying to get a handle on, so.
Mr. Pennings?
Well, if the new director wants to lose popularity real quick, just start talking rezoning.
Here's an idea. How about for third shift parents, we start to offer school from 3 to 10 in the evening?
We need to come up with some ideas, I sure tell you
It's
that.
a possibility. Be progressive.
If new members want to really get in a hot spot, you start talking rezoning. But if we have to rezone, I would like to see us know what we have to do so we can have it, like Mr. Bates says, the planning process, and everybody knows 2 months before school lets out that this is where you're going to have to go next year, if that's possible. Because I've been through rezoning twice, just before school started and even after school started, and it's not a pleasant thing to happen. It really is not.
Well, and to piggyback on Mr. Penning's comments, I don't think any of us like even the word rezoning, but I think one of the things that parents dislike even more than that word is surprise. And if we are seeing this, we've got to use our due diligence to come up with the best plans possible. And whether we like or dislike some of these issues, we're just going to have to step up to the plate and come up with a plan to address those. And I think if we know what the plan is and and people understand what we're trying to do, then that will go a long ways. But if we wait till something happens and then we're scrambling, that's when the anger and the emotions escalate with that.
I think to tie in with what Mr. Bates is saying there, I mean, I definitely agree. And we can not like words or like words, but the reality is we've got to have some problems that we're going to have to solve. And I think also to get back to what Mr. Bates was saying, what I would like to see is while we're currently looking at a 10-year, a long-term facilities plan, while we're currently looking at the possibility of or if, when, and where to build new schools or a new school, I also want to make sure that you guys are looking into the other options that we may have to do as stopgap, even though we may not like those either, such as the portables, such as any other options, rezoning, whatever it takes. I think we should be exploring as a school district every option so that when we get some hard information, and hopefully at the end of this process we will have some better information, that we're not scrambling at that point to waste another few months to try to figure out what to do. I would hope that at this point we're already exploring those as much as we can. And again, I think the biggest thing as a parent myself is just being able to know what's going on with a little bit of lead time. I think that's the biggest thing. Change, I think everyone that is, especially people that are on the north end of the county, are seeing what's going on. Again, I was just picking up my son at Marvin Wright today, and you can't swivel your head around without understanding that there's going to be there's a lot of growth. I mean, they're literally building 30 houses within the view of where you're driving up to the school. And I mean, when I say building, I mean they are literally the construction workers on those houses at this moment. So, I mean, I think that's a reality that people understand. If we can just do our due diligence as a school system to make sure that we're getting this information as quick as we can. I wish we could have done it 2 years ago. We can't go back in time, obviously. But if we can just address this as good as we can so that we are exploring every option, and when it comes time that we have the right information, we can start making these decisions.
And one of the things, again, in our conversations today with Mr. Edgens, the other person who's contracting with us is Ryan Latimer. He is a demographics guy who's done demographics work for Metro Nashville schools. And the way Mr. Edgens explained to us, he will be able to take the new developments, tell you based on how many we can predict how many students will come. We've not really had the expertise to do that or the information to do that. Now, we've talked a long time about we know this many new houses have been built here, but we really didn't know we were going to have 80-something students added at Marvin Wright till the first day of school, and we saw who showed up, or they were going to have 70-something new students. A lot of those we can't anticipate until we open the door. I spent the first day of school at Spring Hill Middle School. There were lines of parents coming in the office who were there for the first time to get their kids enrolled and pick up a schedule, who were coming in the office to do that. And some of them just, first day of school, they show up. So we do need to plan for those and anticipate those and, try as much as possible. But some of it has been a wait to see. But I do think the plan that we've got on working on tenure is going to give us a lot of good information. We continue to look for, for places to build and land. There's some work that at this point it's just too preliminary to really roll out in this kind of meeting, but there is work going on that as well.
Mr. Pennings?
Yeah, and as long as we do it ahead of time, parents can understand if they're given the information and a decent time for them to prepare their children and to prepare themselves for going to a new school district, new school. And at the same time, we have to make sure not that, like we were led before, with a new superintendent a different superintendent of schools, and Stan, you were working under a different set of rules. We were told before, we can add 2 classrooms or 8 classrooms to this building, and then all of a sudden the teachers say, no, you can't because we can't feed them. And I know you understand, and Dr. Marzak understands, all that stuff has to be figured in. And as long as that kind of information gets out to the parent, they understand just as well as we do when something has to be done. And as long as it's done in a timely manner and with a real good lead time to get their children acclimated to it, everything will work. But it's when you do it like we've done in the past, 2 weeks before school or 2 weeks after school, all of a sudden you start shifting kids around. That's not a good scenario to be under.
Okay. Any other board members have any comments on that? If not, I believe that's the last item on our agenda. I would entertain motions to adjourn this meeting. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, we do have a special call meeting. I'm good with going ahead and getting it done unless anybody needs a break. Okay, if there are no breaks, I want to welcome everyone to the August 11, 2016 special call meeting of the Maury County Board of Education. First, I ask the Vice Chairman to take the roll.
I was thinking about something else, sorry. Mr. Moore is here. Ms. Martin? Mr. Lindsay? Mr. Beaver? Here. Mr. Laster? Mr. Bates? Here. Mr. Pennings? Here. Ms. Parker? Here. Ms. Powers? Here. Mr. Dudley? Here. Mr. Morrison is here. We have 9 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. With that, we will take the Pledge of Allegiance, and if everyone will remain standing for a moment of silence. Okay, first item of business is to adopt an agenda. Since this is a special called meeting, we cannot make any additions to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Pennings, second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. That motion does pass on a vote of 9-0. Okay, looking at our agenda, we have public delegations. Did anybody sign up tonight in order to speak on any item on the agenda? Seeing none, we're ready to move into mechatronics. So, Mr. Director and Dr. Brown, looks like you all have a recommendation for us regarding some mechatronic materials and training.
Yes,
And
well, here, just, real quick. Yeah, I just want to thank you guys a lot. Dr. Brown came to me on Monday and said, listen, Dr. Marzak, instead of us waiting 3 weeks and then students in mechatronics not having the materials, is it possible that you could ask the board to have a special called meeting to get the materials in kids' hands? So I want to thank you guys for being willing to take this under, because all we're talking about is getting things in the students' hands earlier. So thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Mr. Breed.
I'll just come and make the report because I think it's our responsibility to report to you purchases to make sure that we followed the purchasing requirements that we have. And since this is a purchase that we'd be issuing a purchasing order for, I don't think this got added to the agenda, but this is the actual recommendation for the purchase of the mechatronics equipment. It's from Learning Labs Incorporated for the approval of purchase of mechatronics equipment and training for Columbia Central High School, Mount Pleasant High School, and Spring Hill High School. Like I said, from Learning Labs, the total amount is $235,454, bid number 17-012. This is being purchase is based on a sole source purchase, so it was not bid. We have sent this to our legal counsel. Mr. Wolliver has reviewed this and feels like the sole source letter is adequate to meet those requirements. The funds are available in Fund 141 Restrict for Education. Of course, Dr. Brown is here and can speak specifically to this, and then Dr. Perkins can talk about where the funding's coming from.
And real quick before they come up, just to kind of give you an idea about where we are. One of the things that Mr. Moore made a comment about when we were talking about mechatronics is, well, just how many kids will this benefit? So I want to tell you that as of today, we have 130 students enrolled in the mechatronics program in Murray County Public Schools. So that's what this money is going for, educational materials for over 130 students.
Okay, and just to remind everyone, this is money that we did budget for in the 16-17 budget. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for any discussion or questions. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Morrison, second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. And that motion does pass on a vote of 9-0. With that, that concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Dudley, second by Mr. Moore. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.